Christen Campbell, thanks for being on Fitness and Consciousness.
Absolutely.
So you are working on a documentary about Nepal.
Yeah.
So what is that all about? Maybe get like a little bit closer to the mic.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You don't have to be like right on it.
But. Okay, so about 5 years ago, maybe I'll move the chairs because I'm going to end up leaning back because I can't help myself. So that way I'll stay closer to the mic. About 5 years ago, one of my oldest friends who I'd known since I was 6 decided he was going to go to Nepal and film his first documentary film. And he had been planning it for months, and he had quit his job and cashed in his 401k and done all the things you do when you're going to stop being a traditional grown-up and start being a real grown-up and like live life. And then so about 6 weeks before he was going to go, and then the documentary was so it's about a man named Karma Sherpa who because international tourism companies come into Nepal and they hire the local people for really not much money, and then they take the profits back out, and so the people there don't have schools and clinics and running water and power up in the villages in the Himalaya. And so Karma, oh, sorry, am I still leaning back?
I think it's fine.
Okay. So Karma, he's starting a local tourism company where he hires the local people, pays them fair wages, doesn't make them carry twice their weight up the mountains, all the things that are good. And then he's going to use the profits to build schools and clinics and running water and power in the villages up there. And so Luke Mislinski is the person who's doing that film documentary. And about 6 weeks before he was going, he said, "I really need you to go with me." And I said, "I smoke, I drink, I party, I don't exercise, and I don't cuddle with nature. So I don't see how that's a good idea." And he's like, "Yeah, but it'll be more fun if you go." And I was like, "Okay." So my first hike ever was to 16,500 feet. I didn't even know I couldn't wear jeans. Like, I didn't know all the things that go into what you have to wear to go hiking. I wanted to wear my Converse, but that didn't, pan out. And so we went up and we filmed it for a month, 3 weeks of it being a trek up in the Himalaya. And then he stayed on another month, and once he got back, then we started working through the footage because we had about 200 hours of it. And then we kind of dug through that. And then a year later, the earthquakes happened over there. And the funding that we had, we sent to the people that we knew who had lost family members, houses, businesses. And so we kind of shelved it for a while. And so we've been trying to kind of slowly but surely kind of piece together this over the last amount of time. So yeah, it's a quick overview.
Yeah, so when you know that what you're going to be getting into is something that you haven't done before. So when I was reading up on you before the show, it said like the first hiking boots that you ever bought were like right before your trip, and it's Mount Everest, and it's
it's in the Everest region. It's actually, we went to Mira Peak. So yeah.
So it's like 16,000 feet, something like that? Is that
16,500 feet, which is 2,000 higher roughly than anything in the continental U.S., which I didn't know until we were up there, which is probably good. I didn't need that information. I also didn't know that you are supposed to be, apparently there was like read-along information that I didn't bother reading because I was like, well, reading it isn't going to help me. I'm just going to have to figure it out when I get up there. And so I didn't read any of it. And whatever. It wasn't like I had time to whatever. I got my immunizations. That was about most of them. Almost all of them. But so
climbing that, like how did you just like, because once you set your mind to something, you can just do it, or what made you think that it's going to be okay and you're not just going to be like one of the frozen people that is just left there?
Yeah, but you gotta say yes more often than you say no to life. Unless you hear a very distinct no, there's no reason not to do it. Not the little like, should I, the kind that like you wobble back and forth or second guess. Those aren't no's. That's just all the other things getting in your way. But if you don't feel a no, then say yes to everything that's possible, you know?
Yeah, you at least get a story out of it.
Absolutely.
So how was it then? Like, how did you
Oh my gosh.
adapt, and like what were there? Did you run into problems? And
Well, that was the thing. That's why he thought it would be great if I went, because never having hiked, never done outdoorsy stuff. I had never camped. I had never done anything, and so we thought it'd be this great comedy of errors where, you know, everything that goes wrong with me, it'll be funny and it'll just work, and then we'll present it on behalf of Karma's tourism company that, you know, if this chick can do it, you can do it. And it would be this, you know, helpful living through me sort of idiot abroad kind of thing. And it didn't work because the universe just took care of me. I'm the only one on the trek that did not get sick. I am the only one, not traveler sickness, not altitude sickness, not nothing. And everyone gets sick in Nepal. Everyone. Like, to the point where Japanese scientists came over, brought their own food, their own water to try and find the source of why everyone gets sick in Nepal, and they still all got sick.
wow.
Yeah. And so it was just freakish. Like, I didn't slip and fall, nothing. And Luke, being the one who was going to be behind the camera at this point, he ends up getting sick. He ends up getting altitude sickness, and we have to hike him back down. Like, it was, as all things, you can't plan an adventure. It doesn't work that way, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. So how did he find out about, it was him that got in contact with Karma somehow.
Yeah.
How did he find him in particular?
Well, Luke grew up skiing, and so he was living out in Seattle at this point. He was taking an avalanche class, and he made friends with a guy named Glenn Young, who was in the avalanche class. Glenn had lived over in Asia and goes over there, you know, annually, and does hikes and treks and mountaineering. He's a mountaineering person, and they became friends. And one of Glenn's good friends is Karma Sherpa, from having started going trekking there 10 years before or whatever. And so he told Luke the story, and then they came up with the idea that could be Luke's first documentary film. Actually, originally Glenn asked Luke just to come on the trek and take pictures so he'd have it for advertising or whatever. And then Luke's like, we should make a film. Like, let's help this. This is because this is what we should be doing all over the world, is reinvesting in our local communities. And when we go to someone else's community, investing in their community, helping them thrive, and not just going in and sucking life out of their community and leaving, you know?
Yeah, so what's this current state of Karma's business? And, you know, there was the earthquakes and stuff. And like, so what, like right now, what's he up to?
I also forgot. The big avalanche that happened on Everest happened 4 days into our trek that year too. And a bunch of people from Karma's village were up on the mountain at the time. And I don't know if you've heard about or remember much about it, but there's the largest number of people died in that avalanche in any mountaineering accident at any time. So, and that was about 18 miles as a crow flies from where we were, and we still had 3 more weeks to go, and there's no, like, you know, there's no internet or anything up there. So anyway, but no, he's doing his treks every year, and, you know, slowly but surely people are starting to recognize that you don't just pick a tourism company out of Hotwire or Expedia. Like, do a little research, figure it out, and find someone, because you go there and there were people carrying packs up the mountain, and their packs weighed more than I do, and they were half my size. You know what I mean? Like, but the companies know that they can pay them just a little bit more to carry a lot more, rather than hiring 2 people. They're not paying them that much anyway. A lot of the money they make is from tips from the people doing the trek. So these tourism companies are hiring them for almost nothing. You're paying, you know, $5,000 to go on a trek. They throw 500 of it divided by like 20 people on a staff. So
So I would imagine then if that's, does he like offer a different sort of uh, package then? So like it's not only like he's not just taking you to the same places that the other places are taking you. Is he leading you through things that you may not see?
Yeah, he
otherwise?
took us through his home village, and we did a homestay there. So you're like, living in his house, and he does it all over. He'd been to Everest a handful of times and gone up, and the first time he was on a trek to Everest, he was like 15 and didn't even have shoes. It's just a different world. Only white crazy people want to go and do this stuff, by the way. Like, it was the whitest, like you're looking around and it's just a bunch of white people that want to go do this. I was like, see, this is what I've been saying. Why do people want to go do this? This is crazy.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because I kind of wonder sometimes like why, I'm attracted to, like people are attracted to like what they're attracted to. Like, so like for whatever reason, like India, the Himalayas have always been this interesting thing to me, and even like Nepal. So I go and get my incense at, it's called Shop Tibet, but everything is from Nepal.
Oh,
I guess,
is it?
yeah, because I guess getting in Tibet is difficult, and everything is pretty much from Tibet there. But like from the time I was like in my early teens, I guess, I remember I got my first 2 yoga books when I was 15 at a Grateful Dead concert. And I could tell like by the pictures that like the paintings were, I knew that you couldn't paint that if you didn't really know how it was. Like you had to understand some things to be able to paint that. And so I started digging in. So I was like, why India? Like, why don't I want to go to Greece really bad? Like, why don't I want to go to like Canada is like right there, and I don't really, I mean, if there was some reason for me to go, I would go, but it's like there's nothing in Canada that's really pulling me, or in Mexico, or like, but for some reason India and like Nepal, that region, Tibet, it seems to have some sort of mystery to me. Like, do you have that too? Like, where there's like one in particular place that isn't?
Well, first things first, have you been over there yet?
No.
What's holding you back?
I don't know really. I might have to try to plan on that. I guess when I was like younger, it'd be like, the money. I had kids, 2 kids.
Right.
So I was paying like a couple $100s a week for child support and living by myself, and didn't have like a lot of extra money. But now that I could go, then I don't really know.
Yeah.
So I might have to get there. 'Cause I guess once you're there, if you're doing it right, it doesn't really cost a lot once you're there.
Oh no, the flight's the most expensive thing. I mean, you can stay. So sorry, sick. Once you can stay at a hotel, hostel, or actually we stayed in a really nice place for I think it was $15 a night, and that was in like a really nice.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah. But one of our other ones where we stayed was like $5 a night. This is stuff out after the trek. There was no staying in anything when you're going up the track. You're sleeping on plats of wood that you have a sleeping bag and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think if I would want to go, I wouldn't necessarily need all the fancy like places to stay. Just like some place that is not
just
going
clean enough.
I won't like wake up dead and frozen, and I wouldn't want that to happen. But
on the trek, it's just rough. It's wildernessy with shaky walls and stuff like that. But we could go down into Kathmandu, or where we stayed up in Chiang Ryan at one point, which is just up in the Kathmandu Valley, looking out over Kathmandu. When I'm saying something nice, I'm saying just like the water was rainwater caught, and so it was clean enough that you felt like you could shower and not wonder. That's really my level. I just want to be able to take a shower and not wonder if it gets in my mouth. I'm gonna
parasites. Don't want that.
That's all I care about.
Yeah, it would be interesting, and like for people that can like see on the video, like there's I'll adjust the screen for a second.
Oh,
that you can kind of see this is kind of like shorter. But that leopard was a man-eating leopard in India, and Kristen and I just met, so I gave her like the tour. We're at White Pine Wilderness Academy, and the owner, his grandfather lived in India for like 20 some years, and his job was as a shikari to track the man-eating leopards or man-eating cats in general, and kill them, because they might kill, one cat might kill 100 people, and a small place like the size of Broad Ripple, so like a few thousand people or something like that, they might kill between like 3 to 5 people per week or so, something like that. And so like to catch these cats, what he might do would be to he would see like a dead human on the ground by a tree.
Yeah.
So sometimes the cats would kill people and then come back later. So he'd see the dead person, he would climb the tree and wait for the cat.
Oh, so they ate them dead?
Yeah.
So they're more like vultures. They weren't.
Or well, they would kill the human and then they would come back later to get them for whatever reason. Sometimes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's like they were just letting it ferment.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the reasoning is, but that's one way they would do that. So you just like climb a tree. Imagine it's like you're in the jungles of India, and there's all kinds of stuff around you that can kill you, and your job is to kill that man-eating cat. Because what if it kills somebody else? You're going after it, and it kills somebody. It kills a kid.
Right.
And then you're still tracking it down, and it kills another kid.
So basically, you're applying the moral philosophy of utilitarianism. What it has the effect of having the most happiness for the most people, killing the cat.
Yeah. So like they had like a lot of respect for the cat, because the cat was just doing what cats do, and so there's a couple of them here that Matt's grandfather actually tracked. So it's like that cat. The reason why it's on the wall is because it was killing people. Mm-hmm. This is a flute that he made. Matt makes flutes and stuff also.
Okay.
So
to go back to your earlier question, though, let's talk about why do you think you felt drawn to India, Nepal, all of those things, and not so much to other places?
I think it's because maybe from those early paintings that I saw, I just knew that they knew how it was. So if I'm going to be studying, I've been into like, I guess, esoteric stuff since I was a little kid, like trying to figure out like what it's all about, like what's real. So like, okay, there's witches. Are there really witches? Okay, there are. Now, what can they actually do?
Right.
What, or if they're trying to put like a curse on somebody, is that real, or is it just in the person's mind? And then they're about, you put a curse on me, and then I get a flat tire. Well, that's because you put a curse on me.
Right.
And then so I play that in my mind. So I was just kind of like wondering, like, what's real? What can people do? And then I'm reading about these yogis and these people like in Tibet, like these monks, and they could learn to like fly. And so like part of it is like,
right.
Okay, could they really? And then so I would think that in a way, like I don't have to decide whether they can or not. I can just like read about them learning to fly, and I don't have to say, no, they can't, and shut my mind off that way. And I also don't have to say, they can fly. Isn't that cool? Let's learn to fly. I'm going to do this practice and learn to fly, and then spend 35 years and then still not be able to fly. Like, oh, maybe I guess that wasn't true. I just burned 35 years practicing something that wasn't real. But anyways, I just could see that
so they had a little bit more agnostic view just on life in general.
Yeah, they had like
you don't have to have the answers. It's not black and white. You can be in that fluid middle ground.
Yeah, because in my dreams I've flown.
Mm-hmm.
So is that real? I mean, I was really flying in my dreams, and so I just kind of like saw that they had a map of the mind that made sense to me. And like when I was like 14, 15, my friends and I, we would take each other on like guided meditations. We'd go hang out by this quarry, and like you'd have to like walk down these train tracks for a little while, cut through the woods at this certain spot, and then there was this quarry, and we would just, there'd be like water coming out of the walls, and we'd get under there and play around in the water, and then we would just like take each other on these guided meditations. And it's not like we read a book on how to take people on guided meditations. We would just, whatever popped out is what popped out, and we would take turns doing that. And so, and then I started like learning from my jiu-jitsu teacher, like Zen meditation. He's like 70 some years old. Started teaching here in 1967. He was invited here from Korea to teach. And then so just like knowing like what he showed me, because I would have like a question in my mind. So we do 10-minute Zen meditation at the end of every class, and then like the first Saturday of the month there'd be like a hour-long meditation. And so I would have like this question in my mind, like some might be kind of like something like obscure something. And without even me asking him, he would tell me. Like we'd be like at the meditation, at the end of it, sometimes he would give us like these words of wisdom and stuff. And sometimes he would just like look right at me and answer the question that I didn't even ask him, that was in my mind. And that happened many times. And so I was like, okay, here's a way to do this. So that I learned that through this meditation that he was teaching me, when I started learning about other kinds of powers, I guess you could say, that was the base of it. So it's like what he was telling me, I could see it proven in front of me.
Right.
And he said he learned from a bunch of Indians, and he learned, just like really legit stuff. And then so as I was practicing it, I saw the like the signs along my own path that, yeah, this is real. This isn't like, hopefully in 20 years of this practice to this, guru, I'll achieve this thing. It was like, no, you practice for a month and you'll see a difference. Maybe one day you'll notice a difference, like something. Yeah. And like there was a time there, like sometimes he would ask like, so like you'd have like the white belts at the one side of the class, and then yellow, green, brown, black. And a few times he would ask like, at the end of meditation, he'd start with the white belts. Did you hear the clock ticking?
Okay.
No. They don't hear the clock ticking. Yellow belts. No. Green belts. Maybe. When I was a green belt, I heard the clock ticking. And so it was like, okay, because when you're the white belts, they've only been, at class a month, few months, whatever. Their mind was too loud to hear the clock ticking.
Oh.
Same thing with yellow belt. They're there for 6 months,
Not that they didn't hear it, they just weren't conscious of it.
Yeah, like they didn't even know what he was talking about. Yeah. Hear the clock ticking, and then green belt, and then brown belt, and then so on as you move up. And it's not like you hear the clock every tick. It's just that like, oh, there's the clock, and then you're back to your posture, back to your breathing. Mm-hmm. And so there's like these just things along the way. It's like, okay, this is working. And a lot of the Zen isn't like super exciting stuff. It's like there are these, interesting things that happen, but it's not really about those like wild things that happen. It's like just this, like the Zen thing, like chop wood, carry water. It's not all like mindfulness, yeah. So it's not always like the super exciting psychedelic adventure, but it can include that also. But so I guess the Indian stuff, to sum up the answer, is they just had a map of the mind that can be proven. You just have to like start following it. And so like your first day, and you're like, people can fly. Do you believe that people can fly? You don't have to have any faith that people can fly, or this is the way to make people fly. It's just that just meditate for 10 minutes, see what happens. You can see your heart rate drop. You can see things happen. The testing now, you can get hooked up to like brain monitor, and you can see stuff happening. So it's not like some crazy thing that you have to have faith in for a really long time to maybe get an answer. It's just, so that's kind of what it is. And then there is like something fascinating about, like, so if we're downtown Indianapolis and we see the person begging for money, mm-hmm. Now maybe you don't look down on them, but you're not probably thinking, well, I don't know what you think. but most people would be like,
Good.
most people might be like looking down at the bum, the homeless person, and then because this person, it's this bum, homeless, asking for money.
Right.
But over there, like a lot of the monks, if people didn't give them something, they didn't have it.
Yep.
And so they have their bowl, and if you put something in the bowl, then they have whatever that is, and if you don't, they don't. And so they're like they're looked up to because of this, where you take that same thing and you put it here, and people like look down at the bum and not like this great monk, this great ascetic.
Well, they're living entirely on faith in the generosity and humanity, and that is a commitment that, some people don't have a choice here, and that sometimes there's mental illness, sometimes there's addiction, things of that nature, but there's still people that just put themselves in that situation because they have the faith that there's a different currency with the universe than just an hour's worth of work and a paycheck,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I just need to fix something.
Does it make us look less like I adjusted it to see the left better, but there we are. Like most people just listen, but it is on YouTube and Patreon for people to watch the video. But most people are just listening. But
okay. Hi. I wish I was not, under the weather. So.
Anyways, back to your adventure. So when you're meeting the people.
No, but this is a much more interesting conversation.
Okay.
So if you talk about feeling like a pull towards a different direction. Sorry. Let's go back this way. Do you have let's go on the premise that all energy is finite in the universe. And so the energy that is fueling your vehicle on this particular life and taking you through, do you believe that energy then goes into another life after you're gone? Or what do you think? Do you believe in souls? Do you believe, what is your, doesn't have to be an exact, black and white idea, but give me some parameters of a premise on what you think.
It seems like there's where we just kind of like merge into everything else. Like where do I end and the air begin? So if like I'm looking at my hand, I can see like, I don't know if it's like the aura, but I can see like a little bit of not just like there's my skin, but then there's like that little bit
the energy field
around it, and I can see that. Maybe it's an illusion, but
maybe it's all
there.
The drugs you did. It's just tracers.
Might have been, but so I can see that, and also there's like this. I guess like a field of knowing, like what people can like pick up on without like the words. Like I was listening to this podcast yesterday with Wim Hof. He climbed Everest in shorts and shoes, no shirt. He has some, but he was talking about how in Finland a long time ago, people would just, if you were coming over to my house, I would just know it. You didn't. There's no cell phone. There's no phone.
Right.
You didn't send a message. You just like, oh, Kristen's coming by. I'll prepare some tea. And then half hour later, there's a knock on the door, and you knew you were. So he was like, so I think there was like this field of like consciousness where we just kind of like merge back into that, like this. There's like this illusion of separation, like where like if the tree is breathing out and I'm breathing in what the tree is breathing out, so that's like this somewhat of a symbiotic relationship. And like there seems to be some sort of connection in the energy, like we all share. Like the stuff that my hand is made out of is billions and billions of years old. That's pretty far out. Some might think, yeah, I'm 39. I was born in 1979 in Shelbyville, Indiana, but there's also like we're flying through the universe at, we're spinning around at like over 1,000 miles an hour. We're flying through like 18 miles per second. The Earth is going through the solar system, or then the solar system going through the galaxy, and the galaxy going really fast. But like we have this illusion of like just here we are sitting in these chairs. That's real too. So I guess I just think that like after we die, there's just some sort of merging into the whole field, the whole like consciousness. And like when I've like seen people die, like my dad in particular, like when like it for whatever reason I thought that like he saw his mom right before then. So his mom died when my mom was pregnant with me.
Okay. So,
and I have like her kitchen table, which is what I normally do my podcast on, like it's close to my kitchen table. Now, so it's like there's connections like 100 and some years old. And so it's like, even though I never met her, there's some sort of, I mean, she was my dad's mom. And so when I like saw my dad die, he tensed up, like, and for whatever reason, I thought that he was seeing her. Okay. And I don't know why. And like the night before he died, like he died in the morning. This was in like 2005. Like it was at the hospice in the building, like, not the hospice that they come to your house, but you go there and stay. Okay. For like your last couple weeks or whatever. And I was laying in the chair, and the hospital door, or the hospice door to his room, it opened, creaked open, stayed open just a little bit, and then a few moments later, it closed. And there was no like human coming through. There was not like a body anyways. Right. There was no, and this like big heavy door. So just like creaked open, and then just like, so it was like somebody was coming in and doing something. And the lady at the hospice, his like main, like nurse or whatever, she was saying that like her mom, she thinks that like her mom comes to like help people. So she, I don't remember if I told her that, but she was talking about that. They have an interesting like view of death. It's not like they give you like a book and you're supposed to like give whoever it is permission to go. Yeah. Like that helps. So it's like, what does that mean? I mean, we're at this is science. This is like, what do you call science? But these are like a place where you might not expect something that seems like esoteric to be happening. This is like, you have to give them permission. Well, why? I mean, isn't this biology thing? Once it dies, it dies. That tree, once it dies, it dies. That leopard, like, gets to be, well, he got shot. But, yeah. But
the leopard had less of a choice.
Yeah, but like, so like, what does that giving that permission do? So that there's, I don't know how well I'm answering your question of like, what do I think happens next? But it just seems like there's some kind of merging into like the next school. This seems like a school to me. Like where we learn these lessons, we get these same lessons. Oh, this thing frustrates you? Well, there it is again, there it is again, there it is again. Okay, now it doesn't frustrate you, now you just kind of laugh it off. Now here's the next thing we're gonna lay on you. And then see what happens. And then, so maybe after this life where I'm going through is this, carrying this earth suit around with me. Mm-hmm. And then maybe I'll get some other kind of body. Maybe I'll be a leopard, and maybe I'll be, who knows what will happen after that. But it seems like we get these like different perspectives of how it can be. And then once the next thing is, we just kind of see how that is. And then, like with the Indian like philosophy and like the other Eastern stuff, it seems like if they're right, so if I've been practicing this stuff for 20 some years, and so as far as I know, they've been right all along. There's some stuff with like the chakras that I've had experience with that I say it's different than like what's commonly written, because my experience with the chakras is different. But there's a lot of stuff that's the same. But if they're right about steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I haven't got to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 50 million, whatever, and they're talking about that way down the road. If they're right about these first steps that I've proven with myself, then I can kind of trust that they might be right about these next things also. And they have like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and then there's all these things, so like where you read to people after they're already dead, and you're reading to make sure they know where to go. Like they got to plot this thing out, and it's like, well, if they know how, if they're right about these first 5 steps, and I can't just say, oh, still the dude's dead, he's already rotten.
Yeah.
You know, so
it goes back to, you know, Ram Dass, we're all just walking each other home.
Yeah. So for the listeners, it was after I saw in one of Christen's Instagram posts, and that's like my favorite Ram Dass quote. Like, I'm not big on gurus, but
yeah,
I'm really big on Ram Dass. I think
just
he's
like
awesome.
That one particular line.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's like, what do you think? And like, did you learn anything like of the like spiritual nature when you went to Nepal?
Well, hold on. Let's go back to where we're going here. So you subscribe to the idea that your internal without the meat body vehicle is an entity of a sort that then comes back as a new entity, and then a new entity as you're learning lessons and going, you know, a new level of school. You level up,
yeah,
or down, depending, I guess.
Mm-hmm. You flunk or not?
Gotta leave, rather. Okay. So then, do you think that the pull comes from some previous trip through at a different school?
Could be. And so I asking like, maybe was I from India before or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does kind of seem like something like that, because it like yeah, there's some like Greek philosophy stuff that's interesting, but that, you know, goes back. But I'm not like, yeah, there's just something about that region that, I mean, my mom's from Germany. I've had my DNA tested. Like, if there's any Asian blood, it's not much. I mean, I know that I can go back far enough where all this, you know, kind of the same, but there's no like family history that goes back there. There's no anything like that makes sense. But it was just like, as soon as I saw those pictures, those paintings, and these paintings, you know, if you're familiar, I'm sure you've seen, but you can look at one of them for a really long time and keep seeing new stuff. They're so detailed, and if you could even look at it for a long time, but you still have to read about it to know what all those symbols mean. Like, okay, what's the skull mean? Like, what's that drum thing mean? Or what's the sword mean? Or what's the so I think I just kind of like got off the track a little bit, but what were you?
So what if we look at it a different way, though? What if we look at it, instead of the energy that's, you know, operating your meat vehicle, this round, as we were talking about earlier, about more of a collective energy field that we all share. So what if once you go back into that, and in your next life, you're not the same entity, you're a hodgepodge of different particles of that large energy field, creating the next entity. And so it's more of a collective consciousness. It's not you previously lived in India, but it's almost like fractured stardust. You collect it from a bunch of stars that exploded over the years. It's not just one star You didn't come from a star, and I didn't come from a star, and we're not just like individual pieces of rock from one star that gets, like a Iron Man little thing that lights them up. Wow, can't remember what that's called, but so instead of it being your previous life, you're a piece of all these different things that all have fragmented memories. And part of your draw to it is the particular fragments that put you together this time. There's questions in those fragments, but the answers aren't there because those are in someone else. And you didn't get all the questions and all the answers in the same existence this round.
That's an interesting thought. So it's like we're in this school and we're like classmates in this school, and so that your other like classmates, like some of them are going on to leopard school, or they're going on to see what being an octopus is all about. And then, but me and you we're going to this like same, or like part of me and you is going to this other school, and part of us is going to some other school on the next trip through wherever it is.
Well,
is that what you're?
Well, think about it. If we go back to let's say we go back to when there was 5,000 people on the planet. We're at going on 7-8 billion now. So let's go back to when there was 5,000, and all of those people had, for lack of a better word, a soul. And they had a whole soul, and all of the energy in the universe is finite. So as those people start having more people, there's only so much energy to go around, only so much soul to go around. So you have to start breaking those up into pieces to make all these new generations and make it bigger and more fragmented and more fragmented. And that's why their questions were more solid questions with more solid answers back then, because the simpler needs, the simpler life, the simpler soul. But now we've got this mixture of fragmented pieces from all sorts of experience and all sorts of stories from all different parts of the universe. And now we have all of these questions, and the answers could be anywhere, because it's not all in this one whole soul that came out fresh and new. It's just little pieces of, I don't know.
It's an interesting way to
I haven't thought it through. I'm just bouncing off what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, it's almost impossible to think it through completely, right? Because that's what makes it so interesting to think, like just how it all is, like just kind of getting to like when we have like these religions that are like in a box. Okay, here's this religion. This is what you believe.
Right.
It's all in this box here. And if you have a question, it's in this box. And if you think outside the box, we don't like that. You have to stay in the box.
But even the people within the religion don't agree on the contents of the box.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't like really tell people what to believe, because they're going to have these, hopefully have these thoughts of their own. Most people are, it seems like times are changing now, but
a lot of people really do want to be told exactly what to think, though. That's what they crave. Some people don't, and it just depends. But there are definitely lots of people. And what do you think causes that?
I think that there's kind of like, I guess there's like levels to this game. So it's like where I don't think that I'm like spiritually superior to anyone else. Like there was, like I said, this a friend of mine, we were talking about dating apps. And he had this friend of his, there might have been his brother or something, but he was on, I don't remember which one it was, but he like had his profile like written out like honestly and nicely, and he wasn't getting hardly any response. He changed it to "I like cheese," and he got a lot more responses.
Yeah.
And when I'm thinking about that, and it's like, and you know, the dating apps that I've been on, and I'm looking at the level that people are working on, and you start to see these patterns, and it's like, you know, a lot of them will say like feed me tacos and tell me I'm pretty.
Yeah.
It's unreal how many of them say that, or they lead with like what kind of alcohol they like.
Yeah.
And so I think that when people are operating at that level,
they're a white belt.
Something like that. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that like anyone else is like better, but there is some stuff that's
it's not better or worse, it's a different path.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know how far back or how soon or how recently they were formed into something that they're just figuring it out. You know, if you can't really get angry or impatient or upset with people once you have the empathy for everyone has to take their journey at whatever pace it is. There are many, many people who they have absolutely no idea they're not being unique, but that's because they're all watching the same thing, doing the same thing, doing this, you know. Sorry. Having worked for a dating service company for it'll be 18 years this summer that I started for them.
Wow.
And it's my 6th city, and then I take years off to go travel, and then I go back. But people are just at different levels, at different paths, and you never know who met someone, the love of their life at 18, and that love of their life died when they're 29, and they never learned how to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I mean, there's just every single person has a unique and different story. Sometimes it has to do with their parents and what their parents did right or wrong or damaged them or whatever. Sometimes it has nothing to do with it. Sometimes it has to do with someone gets a passion for medicine and they get their blinders on and all they're doing is studying and wanting to be the best doctor they can possibly be. And all of a sudden they look up and look around and realize that they forgot to learn anything else. I mean, that's very common for doctors.
Yeah.
And so everyone has, as you said earlier, who knows why you have the pull towards something that you have. And this particular round, maybe it's spirituality and enlightenment and where you can find steps on the path. Jim Carrey is a great example right now. He's hit this point in his work towards his spiritual life that he's wanting to take. But instead of realizing that, it was just how many seconds ago in the grandness of time that he didn't have it figured out, instead, he's standing where he thinks he has it all figured out and turning around and going, what's wrong with you guys? Why don't you know this?
Mm-hmm.
When it was just that long ago, he didn't know what he thought he knew. And and he still has a way to go until he gets to the next level where he realizes that they don't know either because he didn't know a minute ago and they didn't know something behind the person there and there. And then it's not even linear. It's a continuum. It's a whole, that everyone just has their own scenic path to wherever they're going.
Yeah.
And we're all just walking each other there.
Yeah. Yeah, there was this documentary. It was like a yoga documentary. And I think it was called Enlighten Up. And this woman, she was wanting to kind of like introduce her friend to yoga to kind of like prove its benefits or whatever. And her friend, he was a rock climber, and I think he was a photographer also. And so it shows him, he's like, okay, I'm with you. So they go to India and they go to these different teachers, and some of them you could tell seemed like be pretty legit. They're like Iyengar, and then there's like another guy who's like their guide for a while. You can tell like he knows a lot of stuff. He knows like 7 different languages, and he can recite from all these different books, but he didn't really seem like he knew it. He didn't seem like he knew it.
He could regurgitate.
He could, yeah,
but not extract.
Yeah, and there's like moments like when he looks at the camera, and it's like he kind of like knew that they were like kind of catching on that he didn't really know or something like that. And so it's going along through this documentary, and then there's like a part where her friend is like going through all this stuff, and he's like, I don't know, and he's like there for like, he wants there to be proof, instead of, and she's trying to make it the spiritual thing, but they go to like Iyengar, and Iyengar's talking about how it's like, yeah, I just started just because of the physical part. It's like when I was a kid, I didn't have health,
right.
So I wasn't worried about spirituality. I wanted to get healthy.
Yeah.
So this was to make me physically better, and that's okay. So he's like, I don't blame you. And then, but she's like wanting him to see like some spiritual thing. But then it kind of goes along like, well, he's a rock climber, super dangerous. I don't know if you can be a rock climber and not be a Zen master. Like you have to pay attention. My fingers have to be on this exact spot, because if they're not, I'll fall and die.
But if you overthink it,
then you'll fall and die.
Right.
Yeah. So it kind of seemed like he already knew this stuff. So people are using this yoga path, and it's been proven millions and millions of times that this path works. But it didn't seem like he really needed it, because he was a rock climber, he was a photographer, it seemed like he already maybe he couldn't do all the physical stuff, so his headstand wasn't so great at first, and
right.
So.
But he already had his mindfulness through a different route.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest mistakes we make, is we want there to be one answer, and we want everyone else to use our one answer, because it's the only one answer for everyone. They just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
But it's also that I had some friends that went to a yoga, well, we won't call it a cult, but a yoga place in Thailand for months, and they get to the point at this particular one, which is well known and very like, that's where people go, and they have convinced people that if you get sick, then it's because you're not enlightened enough. You're not doing the yoga right. You're not whatever. So therefore, they are trying to put their own box, just like anything else, that it's the box full of all the only answers you will ever need in this life. And anyone outside of our box is clearly not enlightened, is clearly all the other things. Just like, the religion box, where this is the answer to all things, and anyone outside of our box is a heathen, and is, all the other things. So not every, but a large majority of people are just they're like cats. They just want their box. They want to sit in their box. Why won't you just give me the right box? I don't.
Yeah, so I think people might want that box because they're hoping that they can trust somebody to know how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I like about Ram Dass, because he was Harvard professor, psychology. Mm-hmm. And he had I think it was 100 research students under him. And he had the nice office, and he had a nice car, and he was getting these awards, and everybody was telling him how great he is. He'd go to his family thing, and he's the Harvard professor. Mm-hmm. So, wow, here's the Harvard professor. Oh, what's he going to say? He's a Harvard professor. So he had, like this, but he's still like, I don't really know how it is. Like the guy in the documentary who could recite the Bhagavad Gita, and he knew these 7 different languages, but it looked like he didn't really know how it was. And Ram Dass is looking around, and he's like, I read these books. I do 12 hours of studying for a lecture. So I read this stuff. I tell the students what I read, and then they write it down.
Yeah.
And he's like, that can't be what we're supposed to be doing here. He's like, yeah, I look like this thing that I'm at the top, but really, I don't know what's going on. And then Timothy Leary is in this, it's like an office the size of a closet, and he's like, hey, have you ever heard of mescaline and LSD and psilocybin? And so he starts hanging out with the wrong crowd, and then ends up going to India, and has his trip there, and he's still doing a lot of LSD. Takes a bunch of LSD to the teachers there, and meets his guru. And he said, this guy just like, he doesn't need the car, he doesn't need some title, and he doesn't really need anything. He has a blanket, and that's about it. But he could tell right away that this guy knows how it is, and he like was able to kind of like read his mind. He was like thinking about his mom the night before and stuff like that. I don't know how much you've read about Ram Dass, but
I don't really get into him actually.
It's quite a fascinating story, and I like the way I like listening to the audiobooks that he reads, like this of the lectures and stuff, because he has like this groovy way of speaking, and he's like the hippie way of speaking, and I just think that it sounds cool, because he came back from India, and it's the late 60s, early 70s and stuff, and he's teaching the hippies the way it is. She better go hide when she blows her nose.
I don't want to spike the sound and monitor.
That's fine. I'll hit pause.
I think so. We'll see.
All right, we're back on.
Okay.
All right, so where were we? So Ram Dass, and so I'm just finding out, even though he had, this position of that, so many people were like looking up to him, he knew that he didn't know how it was, and it wasn't until he went to India and found this guy that he realized, okay, they do have the map of the mind, and it's proven, and so he went from taking a lot of LSD, and maybe that's helpful along the way, and then he realized, well, it kind of only works while you're doing it, and then afterwards, what are you going to do with what you learned? And so then he like quit doing it, and so
that's more Terence McKenna too. I mean,
might get a little closer to the mic.
I leaned it back again today. Terence McKenna and psilocybin and all of the mushroom trips that way, where you take it and then apply it, to what you learn. But let's go back, and now let's go back to your question earlier and talk about what if you don't continue on? What if this is your only finite life? What if it's a beginning and an end, and that's all you get? There is no more school after this. There was no school before it.
It's just the experience of here we are, and
yeah,
and then we just pop out of existence like a bubble.
What would that mean to you?
I'm not sure it would make much difference of how I live my daily life. I still.
Not your daily life, but what about the bigger things? What about your pull towards India and Nepal and those things?
Well, I think I would still want to go, but it's like, why do I want to go? It's not like I'm trying to find a guru or anything like that.
Do you need answers before you go ask questions?
What do you mean?
Well, you said it's not like I'm doing this thing, the answer as to why I'm going. So do you need an answer before you go?
No, or just go because I feel like going, and that's it. Doesn't have to be any. Go. Yeah, I guess that, see what happens when I get there, because I know some people are a friend of mine that went to India as part of her with her yoga group. She was like traumatized by it, seeing the poverty.
Oh, yeah.
A woman tried to sell her baby, and she just wasn't expecting. I think just the poverty was a huge thing for her, and she just wasn't expecting. Like she said that like people were looking around like, oh, it's so beautiful, and she was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And she's like, a spiritual person. She's a yoga teacher. She was looking around like.
But she had learned yoga in the States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be like a little bit different thing. And then, what are they teaching over there that's different? But she seems to be somebody that's pretty with it. But I think she was just kind of like hurt seeing people that are in such bad conditions.
When's the first time you remember seeing poverty that really struck you?
Besides on like TV, I don't know that I've really seen it in person. I've seen like the homeless people on the streets downtown.
Do you remember a moment of any sort of thing like that? A homeless person or something that struck you?
Well, I guess what popped into my mind was like my dad didn't always have like apartments or houses to stay in. So there were sometimes when he like just kind of like lived out in the woods and had a tent or stay in his car. Or sometimes I would go with him. Sometimes we'd just be like camping, like southern Indiana mostly, and some different places around there. And then, but I didn't really think of it as like poverty or anything like that. He usually like dressed nice and still like, so I didn't think like, oh, Dad's so poor. I don't remember thinking that way at all. It was just, to me, it was just like normal. So going to Dad's, we're camping out in Brown County. And then same thing the next week and the week after that for a long time. Sometimes he did have apartments and houses and that kind of stuff too. But
what were the reasons for when he did and when he did not?
I think just kind of like part of the deal some people get here. Like some people seem to be able to make money pretty easily, and then some people don't. And so a lot of times he was like selling cars or something like that. And so he would, sometimes be doing like really well. And then like the times when he didn't, I don't know. And it was never even really something I remember asking about, like, why are we in the woods again? It's winter. Or I don't remember ever even really thinking about it other than just like, this is just how it is.
Were you an only child?
I have a sister that has the same dad, okay, and a sister that has the same mom. And then I have like stepsisters and stepbrother. And but at that time, my sister with the same dad, she lived in California most of the time.
With her mom.
With him. Yeah. And then when she moved back here, like when she was like 16 or so, she's about 8 years older than me. It was at like this house my dad had. But
as far as the situation in the woods, you were an only child in the situation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it just seemed like that was just how it was. But I suppose I don't remember like around here seeing any like the kind of poverty that happens there, like in most of the places in the world. Like people talk about like the 1%, and they'll kind of like vilify them, not knowing that they're probably in the 1% too. If you take the whole world into consideration, like I'm in the 1%. Mm-hmm. I'm not a rich guy. I mean, I do okay, but I'm not.
Oh, we're much more comfortable and wealthy than the majority.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like people wouldn't like think of that. I'm the problem in the world with all my money and greed, but yeah, I'm part of the 1%. If you're taking all those other places into. And it doesn't take much to get there. It's something like $30,000 a year or something like that. It's not much that puts you into that position, but yeah, I'm not sure.
A large portion of the world makes less than $2 a day for sure.
Yeah.
We're not in the 1% necessarily by the standard of where you and I are versus where the 1% are to us.
Right. That's a big difference.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because do you really have anything that you need in your life that you don't have? And I'm saying need, you know?
Right. Yeah. Like the last girlfriend I had, she's like, you never talk about like, what you need. And I was like, I don't really need anything.
Right.
And it's like, she like didn't quite get what I meant by that.
Did she want to give you something that you needed?
No.
Was that part of her love, her language of communicating that she wanted to fulfill needs for you and therefore wanted to know what they were? It might be a different kind of need.
Yeah.
The conversation she was having.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably something like that. Because there's like some people.
Some people are introverted with their needs, and some people are extroverted with their needs, and they will, communicate to others what their needs are, and therefore work on their needs together. And some people internalize them and deal with their own needs without the help of others. So it just kind of depends. And she may have been a person who wanted to work through needs together.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember the exact context, but it was something like people will think of like they have like this ideal mate.
Mm-hmm.
He's this tall, he has this education, his hair is this color, his beard is this long, and he makes this amount of money, and he listens to this kind of music, and he does this, and then
the love of their life never looks like they thought it would.
And then
if they allow the love of their life to happen.
Yeah.
People are absolutely dead set on sabotaging their happiness. It's amazing. Because again, I interview people, potential clients for the dating service every day. That's what I do. And exactly that. They will describe a box in which they think their partner best suited to them, in which they think that person resides, and the love of their life doesn't look like that, doesn't act like that. The best fit for them isn't anything like they have. Not that it's not anything. There are certain things that, yes, they've learned and this is something they need, but oftentimes, particularly if someone's like, oh, I need someone that's 30, 40 years younger than me because I'm so young for my age. No, you're not. You're really not. You're not anyway.
Yeah, I think it's like John Mellencamp was saying that the right age for a guy his age is half his age plus 10.
Yeah. No.
So if he's like 60, then she's 40 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, and
the rule is if you could legally drive yourself to visit them in the hospital when she was born, the answer is no. Like, if you were off driving around and doing 16-year-old kid things when she was just coming out of the womb, you probably don't have that much for a common experience in this particular life.
So what do you like? So you actually interview people
in person, yeah.
In person. So how do you like turn that corner for them? And because to kind of like finish my thought of the other one, like we're making this ideal person in your mind, and then when you meet the real person, they're like, you're not this. Oh, you don't match up that way either. Instead of just like looking at that person like, okay, here's this person, and they're like, I think I'm pretty good at like accepting people the way they are and not trying to like, oh, I would like you better if you quit doing this. So stop doing this, and then we'll be cool. And until then, we're gonna have arguments about that. And it's, I see people that like have these like relationships and they just pick at each other and pick and pick and pick. And I think I'm pretty good at not doing that. It's like, I think if people like just sorted things out in their own mind, then they would be a lot happier because they're not causing like all this kind of like friction that's, this person is whatever it is, but it drives them crazy where it might not be anything bad. It's just some trait that like, so what do you see? Like, what's your I don't remember quite the segue that got us on that bike. So when people come in with like some expectation of this is what I want, set me up this person. Like I'm into Asian chicks. I'm into like whatever it is. Like, and they have like, will you set me up with an Asian chick? Like, do you have people that are like doing that kind of stuff too? Or
oh yeah, people have their boxes, and they might have it all figured out as far as they know, and they're going to do it exactly that way, and that's fine, because again, everyone's on their own path. It really doesn't matter. I can guide them from what I can see outside of their box. I can point it out, but the difference between offering an opinion and making a judgment is that I don't hold on to it. I'm going to give you this based on my experience and pattern recognition and helping people for however many years and just natural, innate, whatever. But once I've offered you a perspective, it dissipates. I no longer have an attachment to it. Mm-hmm. So whether you use it or not, it has no bearing on my life. So, but a judgment, you are deciding a perspective on that person's life, and if they don't go in the direction you think they should, then they did it wrong, incorrectly. You know?
Yeah.
And I don't have any attachment to how people. I just think everyone has to learn and do their path and make their choices, and we all have the life that we're choosing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people like to think that life happens to them, but we make choices about everything. We choose the people we're dating. We choose the things we're getting up and doing or not doing, or all of those things. And so I can tell someone that they're going to choose whatever life they want.
So when someone's coming to you and they're telling you what they want, and you're like, okay, I think you'll be a good match with Sally. So you and Sally go out on Friday night and...
Oh, we don't make them go out together. So that's the other thing. We can suggest someone to you. Let's say that you came in and you signed up for the dating service, and I could call you up and say, you would love Brittany. Like, you guys really, actually, that's a real thing in my head now. But no, a person that would really be great for you. And, but you can't see it. I can't make you see it,
Yeah.
Maybe she's a redhead and you just don't date redheads. You had one bad experience once when you were 7 and you have now ruled them out for life. Whatever it is, I can't discount nor negate nor erase your history or your perspectives or your way of dealing with anything. I can only add one new amount of information into your decision making, and after that it's yours. It's no longer mine.
So how does it work? So the guy, you think he's a good match with Brittany, you're like, okay, here's her phone number, or here, like, how does that actually make the connection?
Oh, I let's say that I just offer it up and say that it's somebody that would be good for you, and then there's photos and videos and profiles, and you can look through it and decide for yourself, and she can decide for herself. And we have been about mutual consent since the dawn of time. So nobody has your last name or your personal telephone number unless you want them to.
Right. So if they both say yes, then you're like, okay, here's the contact info.
And then you guys go and do what you want to do. But you don't say yes unless you're interested.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's such a fascinating thing. It's something that I've talked about on the podcast a lot, like the relationships, and like it's called like fitness and consciousness. And so people, like, the fitness is in there because I'm a trainer, but the consciousness part of it is in there for a reason. It covers almost anything. And fitness can be mental fitness. It can be, and then the consciousness involves pretty much anything. And it's my show, so I do whatever I want.
As one should.
And I'd be really bored if it was just about, even though I'm a fitness dude, I don't want to just talk about fitness stuff. with that consciousness thing and what it means to different people, and so when I think of like why it's so difficult, and it seems like there's more single people into their 30s and 40s now, and then like they get to be like 40, and then they're like, oh, finally this just worked out. They've been married before. I've never been married. I have 2 kids, 2 different moms. My daughter was born just before I turned 19, and my son was born just before I turned 21.
Okay.
And so that after that, I got a lot pickier. And
Did
so
you also get a vasectomy?
No, I'm thinking about it though.
You haven't gotten a vasectomy yet?
No.
Dear Lord, man.
You want to drive me to the hospital now?
I will. That's just lack of chivalry and gentlemanness. And do you want to have more kids?
No.
Okay. When you know that answer and you don't take care of it and still leave it up to someone else to prevent it from happening, that is just Bush League. You got to go get that handled, especially if you have health insurance, because it generally covers it for a guy. And it's easy.
I looked into it. It's like $900.
Yeah, I think you can get it done for like $400, and it's easy. You put a pack of frozen peas on it for a day and a half, and
good to go.
Seriously,
Yeah.
And then you take out all the worry for women. You take out because you don't realize it, but anytime you're in a relationship, that any girl, I hear this at work all the time. Mm-hmm. They're worrying about it. Even if there's not a real chance, there's a chance.
Yeah.
And then you take out the fact that she doesn't have to take hormones, which makes people crazy. It also has a strong effect on things like uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, breast cancer later on. Mm-hmm. All of the things that go into it, you need to. You're almost 40 years old. Get that handled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'll make some calls.
The more you know.
Yeah. So what was I saying? So what I see, like in, like why, like some women choose what they, like from what I understand, women that were abused when they were young are a lot more likely to be with a man that abuses them later on.
Yes, absolutely.
And what I've seen with like,
it's what they know, so it's what they trust.
Yeah, and it's like there was this friend of mine. We kind of dated, but we're just friends now and have been for a while. But like she was talking about this guy, and I could clearly see that it was like a trauma from her dad. That then this guy, she didn't know at first, but when you're outside of it, you can see it coming from a mile away. But this person has to like, oh no, it's cool. And then like, oh. And so when we were talking, and she was like trying to like sort through why she would pick a guy like that. And I started like saying, like, how have you considered like stuff about your dad? And like just before I said it, she's like, stop. She's like, before you even say it, it's like, I'll give you 70% credit for me putting that dad thing together. Yeah. You can't have all of it because I stopped you before you said it. Okay. So she wanted to like, okay. And there's like something that I call ghosts in relationships where like maybe she was, or like a woman is with, guys get traumatized also, but there's like the thing with women is different. It's insane how common the abuse is, and yes. From very early age, and then it continues on, and but they'll be with somebody, and then that new guy that's a good guy, he has to, he wants to be good, and he wants her to like heal from all that, but if he like says, he could say something, and her response is not at him, it's at what I call the ghosts. So she's not reacting to him, she's reacting to the guy before and the guy before that who were really treating her bad. But this new guy who's a good guy that's trying to just be good to her is like dealing with this like onslaught, like, and he doesn't know what she's talking about. And so I've experienced this myself, like this reaction is like, what? why are you I just started a job, and my girlfriend at the time like wanted me to go to Florida. I was like, well, I can't really take off. I just got a new job. And she's like, well, they like it when you do that or something like that. Like they like what? And it doesn't make sense because she's like, I won't say who, but she like has a pretty high position in the company. But she's like, they know people have lives, and so like it didn't make any sense to me. And then I found out like later on that like, I couldn't figure out like why she was so upset about me not going to Florida. She was going with her kids, and they were like, whether I went or not, she wasn't counting on me to pay for it. She wasn't counting on me for anything except maybe I would go. And then like later on, I found out like she was asking her mom to go with her places, but her mom was avoiding going with her places, but she would go with her sister to like places. Mm. And so she wanted her to go to Florida, and her mom said no to this Florida trip like years before. So I was thinking, okay, well, maybe that makes sense because she's not just reacting to me, because it's not that I have to think it's logical for it to be okay for her to be upset about something. It's like, oh, she's reacting not to just me, but the ghosts of this. It hurt her feelings when her mom doesn't go with her, but would go with her sister.
Yeah.
So, and she didn't even like put that together. And I brought it up later. I was like, when she brought up her mom not going with her, I was like, oh, do you think maybe that has something to do with like, why you're so upset about me not going to Florida? And she was kind of piecing that together. Oh, I didn't think about that. And you know, she's like somebody that like tries to dig deep and understand and heal these traumas. But it's interesting to me how women will, or guys also, will keep going to these people who seem different but like give like a similar trauma, and then the good guy that doesn't like that, they will like avoid him. They'll break up with him. Like, do you see that too? Like
But first off, we have to redefine good guy, but we'll get to that another time. Second of all, a lot of times they understand abuse and they trust abuse because you know what that is. But if you take that out with someone you don't know, you're flinching, not knowing if it's coming. At least if it gets to the point where it's coming, then you know what it is and you understand it. And so a lot of times, men or women who grew up in an abusive relationship will not even realize they're trying to figure out if there's any buttons or any triggers that will cause you to do what's happened to them before, because they're trying to figure out if this trust thing is an actual real thing. It's like we were talking about earlier. Can people really fly? I mean, really? Are we really going on that belief that there are actually trustworthy guys that won't do horrible things to you? I'm having trouble believing it. So let's test that theory, because I'm sure if I just find, it's probably just a button in a different place. Let me look under his arm there, and let me look over here, and let me do this crazy thing over here, because I'm sure the swing is coming. You know?
Yeah.
And I don't want to be blindsided by it. I'd rather just know up front, so let's get this done. And they don't even know that's what they're doing oftentimes. And so it's not that, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yes, they're responding.
So he can hide it for a month. He can hide it for 5 weeks.
He can hide it for
maybe
6 to 9 months.
Yeah, and then you move in together, and it's like, oh, this fucking guy.
Exactly. And so it's survival instinct to try and see what you're made of.
Yeah, people are funny, like what they're aware of, and so like maybe the guy, like I was talking about, like my buddy's brother taking off his well thought out bio on his dating app to "I like cheese." Like, okay, here's something where we don't have to go deep. I like this guy. We can go out, we can get drunk, we can party, we can have fun, and we're not going to be getting deep. So maybe that's what they're looking for. But you have the guy that's like,
well, give me an idea of what his well thought out profile said first, because again, you may not realize that from a girl's perspective, he was saying the exact same thing 100 other guys said.
yeah, that could be, I guess, like well thought out, like who they are, and
there's a
not
lot
just
of
like,
people that say,
I guess it's hard to like sum up. Like I hear like this friend of mine that like made my website for me and stuff, and she has really good like business mind, and she's like a genius at some stuff that I don't even understand what she's talking about.
mm-hmm.
Like when it comes to like information architecture and stuff like that, it's just a small part of what she does. But she was talking about how like she picked out like the pictures for my website,
mm-hmm.
like the main ones, and she's like, people that own the business are not good at picking out their own picture.
No.
And it's like,
same with their dating profiles.
yeah, so it's like weird. I wonder like what are people, you think like, oh, this is my business, this is how I want to present myself.
Mm-hmm.
But the expert's like, no. And nobody else, like everybody agrees with the other person, not the business owner, on what the best picture is.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting thing from like the well thought out profile, and the guy, and the same guy that's puts out something honest, talks about himself, not getting responses. I like cheese, and then starts getting responses.
But again, when he did the well thought out one, may have been only looking at this tiny little sliver of himself. That is the same sliver that all guys think a girl wants to hear about him. And he may have just held up I have a good job, I do this, I do that, I'm financially stable, I like to cook, and go down this list of like, am I dangling the right carrot? And you don't even know you're doing it. And 75 profiles that the woman's read right before that basically say the same structure with the same things in it. And they get to one that's just like, dude, I like cheese. And she's like, you know what? I like cheese. At least let's go, dude. Like, I just want to get out of the house and have a good night. And I know, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Interesting, like how differently men and women can think. So the way that we present ourselves is like, it's almost like the lowest common denominator is what women's like think of, like I know you're new to the area, but like the party place like Broad Ripple, and like people going to like hook up, and like it seems like such a weird thing to me. It's like, what are these people going on? It's like just such like, I don't know, I guess it's just kind of like weird stuff, but that lowest common denominator thing seems to like work. Like the Tinder, just swipe right, she's hot, okay, she's hot, okay. And then
it depends on what you want out of it. Do you want an actual relationship? Do you want just the dopamine rush of matching with someone? Do you want, what do you want out of it? So does it work? Depends on what you want. But to go back to the guy's profile, let's say 70% of all guys' profiles includes either my grandparents met on Tinder, which was funny the first time the first guy said it, but that they want a partner in crime.
yes,
that you see everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Dude, if we're going to be partners in crime, don't advertise it.
Yeah.
So like that
Weird. Yeah.
that phrase just grates on my whatever. Or the guy tells you what to do in his profile. If you're this, swipe left. If you're this, don't bother contacting me. If you're this,
Trump supporters. Swipe this
and
way.
it's just like, why are you even going to swipe right on a guy who's already trying to tell you what to do and how to be and all those other things? Look at the red flag. Like, there's a flag on the field. Everybody stop and pay attention, and let's recalibrate and set the ball up again, and then we'll go again. write your profile about who you are, not about what you, and oh, and when they just list off all the things about women that annoy them. Really?
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2, exactly. Oh, you ran out of room. That's all the space your bio. You used the entirety of this bio to talk shit about women. That's what you did. Well done. You know?
Yeah.
Or really, did you used your entire profile and you're speaking in emojis. Words matter. There's a reason why words used correctly woo women. Your goal to be on an app is ultimately to do some wooing with a woman. So attempt to use your words correctly, because women do read the profile or the bios. A lot of times men don't. Men just go through the pictures and they just match with anyone who doesn't completely repulse them. That's all they do. And then if magic happens and they match with someone, they might go back and look and see if there were words there. Mm-hmm. Likely not, because they've also already decided that she's not going to answer anyway, so I'm just going to send a dumb email. But because you didn't invest any time in it, she's got 75 other dumb emails where there's no thought, or, you know, all the things that go into it.
Yeah, the Snapchat filters.
Oh, dear Lord.
What's up with that? But so do you have like different advice? We probably start to like wrap it up here pretty soon, because we could go on and on about this forever. I think we're well over an hour here, but probably getting close to an hour and a half, but that's fine. Like, do you have like different advice for men and women's? Like, do you have like, yeah, I guess that's the question. Do you have like when you're?
I will say there's a lot of things that we think one gender does and the other gender does. That isn't nearly as true as we like to think. That it actually, different people do different things. It divides less. There are a few things just out of societal influence going back a generation, but as we go forward, more people are figuring out that they don't have to abide by the shoulds. So you're seeing less of that distinct encapsulated idea of what a gender does and how they act. So that part is nice. But the biggest advice that you need to know about dating is that anyone that tells you that there's rules to dating is lying. There's no wait 3 days and do this and do it this way and only ask this question and don't talk about this. Because if you are on a date or talking to a random stranger and you actually do connect, it doesn't matter if that person texts you 10 minutes later. It doesn't matter if you talk about religion and politics. There are no rules to it. The rules come into it when you didn't actually make a connection. And then it's just self-preservation. But that's not really, and that's courtship versus connection. Courtship has rules. And that's where you haven't made a connection yet, and you're still trying to make what happened down the road, and you're following a tradition, and you want it to go. Then, if you have the date and you call her the next day, or and you do this and you do that and you do this and you do that, and you follow a paint by numbers courtship, that's very different than finding someone with whom you genuinely have a connection. And once you have a genuine connection with someone, the rules don't matter anymore.
Either way can work though. Either way can work.
Depends on what you want. Although the Irish curse is, I hope you get everything you think you want.
Yeah. Very interesting. Is there, we can start to wrap it up. How do people, so you're taking contributions for the Karma documentary. Like, how do people find that?
That'd be great. So if you want to go on karmadocumentary.com, and you can search around and find more information. And at the bottom of most of the different entries on there, there are links to PayPal, and that's probably the easiest way, something of that nature. Or you can send a message to Luke at l.mislinsky l.mislinsky@gmail.com. So l.mislinski@gmail.com, or bemusingly@gmail.com, I suppose would be a good one too. And then you can get answers and all sorts of fun, so that we can eventually help him more by getting the film out.
Yeah, it looks cool. I watched the trailer and I looked around the website, and it looks like it'll be really interesting. How much longer do you have to go? So you have all the footage, it's just a matter of putting it all together. Are there more trips to Nepal coming, or?
Right. If we can take the footage we have and put it into some sort of functional form to put out there, so that, again, more people who are conscious-minded people that can go on the treks and choose the tourism company that's local there, that's conscious-minded and wanting to reinvest. Like I said, they're working on building schools and clinics and running water and bringing power up to the villages up there, so that because the way of life is receding, and they need to find a way to continue existing. And part of that is incorporating a little bit of a more modern addition to their life. Because right now, sometimes they're having to walk 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours to go get firewood, because of the deforestation and landslides and all these things that play into it. So they can no longer just keep going and getting a little bit of firewood for what they need. They need to go so much further, and it's just eventually not going to be an option. And climate change. We were in a huge valley on the trek that only 50 years ago was covered by a gigantic glacier, and there's nothing left of it. It was maybe 50 years ago. So that's affecting it too, You could have chipped off ice and you melted it and had some water, and it's different.
Well, yeah, it'd be very interesting to be there and see what it's like. Such a hard way of living, and
but they're happy, giving, generous, lovely, wonderful people who are, smiling and give you what they can. I mean, again, so often the people with the least in the world are the most likely to welcome you in and share what they have. Whereas so often we get more than we need, and who are these people coming to try and share what we have? Mm-hmm. It's just, and not a lot of antidepressants needed in third world countries, or not even third world, but undeveloped countries. So, because they find happiness with what they have.
Yeah, if we can somehow help them in the way they want to be helped, without forcing it on them. I don't know if you heard about those missionaries that went to that island out in the Pacific or the Atlantic, or somewhere, but it's out a while.
Sick?
Well, they...
Or the ones that killed them.
They got killed.
You can't go around
they got killed full of arrows, trying to spread Jesus, and we're not having that. We're going to kill you before you step foot on our...
I wish more people would understand that the word Christian means Christ-like. So be Christ-like. You don't have to go around swinging your Bible around, and just go help people love more, help them with food if they don't have it, help them if they're sick, give them a coat if they need it. Like, live by example, and more people be kinder, and we'll have a better world from it. But if they can't quote the right Bible verse, you're gonna keep the can of beans over there and not share.
Yeah, people are funny. I think that's a good way to wrap it up. Do you have any other final thoughts for us before we go?
Let's all just go walk each other home, right?
Sounds good. Thanks for being on the show, and I guess we'll leave it at that.
All right. Lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you.